What happened?
What happened? Hey everyone, welcome to the Nintendo Pride Podcast, Season 2, Episode 5. We do have a full six-pack today. Special episode happening at noon because we got some special guests that, this is the time that works out for everybody. So before I say anything about that, I am your host, as always, Nathaniel Robojans. Over to this, I had it right, this direction.
Yeah.
Is Eric. You guys know him. How's it going? Next up, we'll bring up, we got Kat Bergeson here. How's it going, buddy?
Hello, friends. It's good to be back.
Nice.
Good to be back.
Next up is Andres Restart.
What's up, guys?
And we got the lovely Kit. Oh, sorry, Krysta.
Uh-oh.
Hi.
already messing it up.
That's me.
Krysta, not Kit. And then this is Kit. How's it going?
Thank you. I am indeed lovely and glad to be here.
Awesome. All right. So we're going to start the show the way we start every single podcast, guys. And we're going to be talking about what games have we been playing lately. And I guess since we got Kit up right away, what have you been playing lately, sir?
It's been Fire Emblem Engage. I think a lot of people have been playing that, been enjoying it.
Nice. What chapter are you in?
I'm still pretty early on. I just did a couple paralogs last night. Got Anna, who I guess has been turned into a small child for this version of. But I'll be honest, I didn't really follow a lot of the previews for this game because for a long time I thought I'd be skipping it. Honestly, it wasn't really grabbing me. But there's been such a lull in new releases after the holidays. I grabbed it, and I'm glad I did because I'm really enjoying it, and it's nice to scratch that Fire Emblem itch.
Nice. Eric, have you played any games in the last week?
Yeah.
There we go.
I'm actually, since I've actually had the chance to play Sparks of Hope, I've been just like pulled back into it. So I'm still fighting through the fourth world, and I technically have enough to move on to the next one. But you know me, I'm going to 100% out it as far as I can until then, and then jump over to the next world. So that's where I'm at.
Awesome. Kat Bergeson, what have you been playing lately?
Oh, January's always my backlog month because, as Kit said, there's always a lull in releases. So, and I haven't touched Fire Emblem yet, but I've been playing a couple games. One is The Messenger on Switch, which is a great sort of retro throwback with a twist. It's a really fun game. Really, really loving it. And I just finished a playthrough of Zelda 2 because it's one of those games. Every Zelda game I have to kind of revisit every so often.
You finished it?
Thank God for save states, though. Thank God for save states. That's
you finished it, which is pretty impressive.
I did, yeah. It's not my first time playing through it, but every time I have to put myself in a headspace of okay, I am ready to get my ass kicked, and put myself in that frame of mind, and then jump into it. So it's a good time. There's a good game to be had underneath the brutality. So yeah,
nice.
Mm-hmm.
Andres, what have you been playing? I know Fire Emblem's one of the games, at least.
Yes. Actually, since I finished Twilight Princess, the only game I'm focusing on right now is Fire Emblem Engage. I think Kit is further than me. I haven't met Anna yet. I've seen her in previews or something, but I think I'm in chapter 6, and I've been taking my time. I always go back to Somniel, see what new mini games there are that I've unlocked, and I've done some of the side areas. There's a training mission where you go back to the Firen's castle, or is it Firen? I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Depending on if you're listening to it in Japanese or English, it sounds a little different. But yeah, I've been enjoying the game a lot. I think it's really good. I can't wait to continue playing it.
Nice. Then we got Krysta. What have you been playing lately?
I have also been playing Fire Emblem Engage. I think I am right around where Kit is. I also unlocked baby Anna last night, which is weird that she's like a 5-year-old now, but it's been really fun. It's nice to sink into just that Fire Emblem game feeling and just getting into those really meaty tactical battles. It feels good. But I think the game that I'm actually more obsessed with, if possible, than Fire Emblem is Pocket Card Jockey, which was an old game by Game Freak that released on the 3DS many years ago. And it was a sleeper hit on the 3DS that I loved. And they just recently launched it on Apple Arcade. So I have been very much enjoying going back to that again and yeah, you guys, if you have an Apple Arcade account, I highly recommend getting into Pocket Card Jockey. So
I'm looking
Nice.
up images of it. I vaguely remember this. I didn't play it, but
yes,
I remember some promotional material for it.
it's solitaire plus horse racing by the makers of Pokemon, which sound ridiculous, but I promise you that it is extremely fun and addictive, and maybe the best game Game Freak has ever made. Just my hot
Back
take.
at the
Oh,
Nintendo
whoa.
office, Pocket Card Jockey was like the secret handshake of like, oh yeah, this person
You
has
have good
good taste. They
taste.
like Pocket Card Jockey.
So good,
Nice.
so good.
I mean,
Play
I
it.
like horses in solitaire, so sign me up.
Who doesn't? And the
Yeah.
horses are cute. So all of those good things are combined in this very charming little game. So
Nice. I guess
Before we
my
move
turn.
on, sorry, I was gonna ask them
good.
just kind of how you guys feel about like Fire Emblem so far. Like, I feel people have complained a little bit about the story, and there's like not really any romancing options, which I haven't cared too much about. I've been kind of like just really into like the Fire Emblem gameplay, and I feel like it feels a lot smoother for me. So I feel I might even be enjoying this more than Three Houses. We'll see once I finish the game, because Three Houses definitely had depth, right? Which Engage is lacking. It's more of like a lighthearted fantasy adventure, which I also appreciate, but I'm just kind of curious how you feel about it.
yeah, I miss the romancing a little bit, honestly. Like my favorite Fire Emblem game was Awakening, and that's where you really needed to do a lot of like the matching and to get those new characters. And I found that aspect of it really, really fun for Awakening. I thought in Three Houses, they kind of like over indexed on that, and it made the game like a little bit slow. And then I think in Engage, they've like under indexed on it, and it makes it a little bit like too straightforward. So I wish there was like some sort of happy medium. I mean, I don't mind Engage. I think the game is like really nice where you just very quickly get into those like big battles that you want to get into when you play a Fire Emblem game. Like that's what you're there for. So that part I really like. But I do really miss a little bit of like the character relationship development part of it too.
Yeah.
And for me, the story is, I agree, it's sort of like a whatever story. It's a little bit generic, but I do like the characters, if that makes sense. So all the sort of dialogue that you can get, I like, and I definitely have some favorites. But again, I don't feel like I'm far enough that I'm totally missing the relationship stuff, because it wouldn't have totally kicked in at this point of the game yet. But I think once I get a little bit further, I will miss it.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I guess just thinking about like maybe what they could have done, or maybe they always go like slightly different directions per Fire Emblem, right? So just because they went away this time doesn't mean they won't go back in the next game, right? But I feel like if there is like that happy like middle ground, because I like the balance of the Somniel and like going to battles. Like I think that's a nice balance. I like the world map, because I feel like with the monastery, it may have been almost too much in that direction, because it took a while to get to the main battles if you really wanted to take advantage of everything the monastery had to offer. So maybe like what they could do is like the support conversations that you can have in the Somniel or like after battle, they're just a little bit more in depth. Like maybe there are some like actual like options that can kind of steer that relationship. They're just fit into the conversations that you can already have with the flow of the Engage gameplay.
Yeah, totally. I like Somniel as well. It reminds me of like a 4-star resort. Like I'm like, this is like the Four Seasons or something. It's like a pool, and it feels
mansion.
nice. It is like it's like a really cool place, and it's small enough. You're right. Then the monastery for you to sort of kind of putz around there for a bit, and then just jump right into another battle. So I do like that hub area a lot as well.
It's cool.
All right. I have been deep diving into master mode in Breath of the Wild. Been at it now for a couple of weeks. Gonna probably be at it for many more weeks, because I've never actually beaten the game in master mode. And I hear obviously it gets a lot easier later once you're fully geared up and everything. Of course, like anything, you can out gear difficulty in that game in particular. But it's refreshing that I can't just walk into every fight and just face roll my controller and probably win. Not that it was that way in every battle in Breath of the Wild, but once you get like certain gear where all your gear is like level 38 and up, and I mean, you don't have to try that hard when you meet the Pokemon clamps usually, but now it's like, oh, because of the regenerating health, like some of the fun things you would do before, like, oh, I want to bomb kite you. Well, no, I don't, because you're at full health by the time my next bomb hits you. So that doesn't work. so it
Nate,
takes
when
away
are you
from
doing
that.
Trial of the Sword?
Yeah.
Are you gonna do it?
Trial of the
Trial of the Sword on Master
yes,
Mode?
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do Master
That's
Mode.
when
Trial
the
of
fun
Sword.
begins.
And here's the thing: I never beat Trial of the Sword.
Oh, no.
In normal mode. It took me a
This is gonna
while to
be-
beat that in normal mode. It's
It's
hard.
so
This is gonna be
hard.
rough.
I don't think I
My
beat that in
goal-
normal mode.
Is that I beat that Master Mode Trial of the Sword before Tears of the Kingdom comes out. I don't know if it's gonna happen.
Ooh,
I
good
believe
luck
in
to
you.
you.
You might have to start
Let-
making
I can do it.
videos.
I'll be live streaming all of my attempts for it, guys, and it's be ready to cry with me, because there'll be times that I finally start getting good, and it seems like and then you just wrecked it. Nope, it's gonna be bad.
I mean, some of
Have
it's
you
just
gone to
strategy, though, right?
Eventide yet?
Eventide. Have you been to Eventide yet?
Oh, not on Master Mode, not yet. I'm a little afraid. I think I'll be better than the first time around, because the first time I went to Eventide Island was the opening live stream I did for it on launch day. I didn't go straight to Kakariko Village. I was just kind of exploring, and all of a sudden I did the shrine in the middle of the water, and there was a raft, and I was like, hey, there's a raft. An island. Can I go there? Sure, let's find out. Or am I going to hit an invisible wall? Ended up there, and all of a sudden all my gear was gone, and I'm like, there's no explanation of what's happening right now. I guess we'll just run around with no gear and figure this out. And literally, I'm like, oh, I don't have any gear. I can't fight them. It took me a minute to realize I still had my abilities, because I hadn't been used to using them yet. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, well, let me climb to the tallest peak here and get a look. Oh, there's a Hinox. That was the first time I ever faced one of those. And that's when I finally remembered I had bombs, and I bomb kited him for 2 hours to take him down on a live stream. It became this event. There was like at one point 3,000 people watching, because they couldn't believe this person's on this island with no gear trying to bomb kite this giant boss thing. I'm like, I don't know what to do. He's got a bunch of gear on him. I want that gear. I don't have gear. Let's figure this. No, it was bad. And then like you'd make a mistake, and then he'd kill you because he could one-shot me, because I only had 3 hearts, because of course I put everything in stamina right away. Because I'm like, oh, this is Zelda. You know, I've done 3 heart runs. I can just put it in stamina. Don't worry. And yeah, that was a mistake, especially when you don't know what you're doing. But it ended up being a lot of fun. That was a really clever shrine. I think all of the like shrines that take place in the world were really, really clever. And it kind of made me like, they had a lot of those battle shrines. I forget what the number was. Wish there was like less of those and more of the shrines in the world that was really organic. That was my favorite part of those shrines. And I hope something like that happens in Tears of the Kingdom. If it's not a shrine, then something else. But very rewarding. Like that I remember that one. Even like the simpler one where you were at the mushrooms and you gathered the orbs and you had to put them on the statues. Like, it's simple, but it's in the world, and because it's constantly raining there, it makes you rethink how you do things, because you might be used to climbing all the time. I really enjoyed those, even the maze. Like, I really enjoyed all those world ones. But I'm getting my butt whooped in Master Mode, and I'm actually happy I'm getting my butt whooped, because I outgeared things so bad in my original save file that I'm like, okay. I've never beat a Lionel. Well, now I'm facing him with ancient armor, ancient arrows that can one-shot him anyways. And okay, well, then this is too easy. So now I'm getting my butt whooped. Like when you run into a Lionel in the opening area, when you have a level 2 stick, that doesn't end well.
It does not.
It does not. There's no way in that moment I can beat that. It's just not going to happen. I don't have the right gear. Everything's going to break before I even get them down halfway. So this is not good. Although then I later found out some of the floating Pokemon platforms had some higher level gear, but I still couldn't take them. So I'm like, yep, I'm done. We're moving on. Now I'm on my way to Varuta. I'm wussing out. I'm going to go get all the abilities. I can't. I need the abilities.
It's interesting how much Master Mode changes things up. Like, your strategy to slowly kill the Hinox on Eventide Island would not work in Master Mode because the life regenerates. So instead of 2 hours, it might be like 24.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
well,
it
now
really
I'm more
forces
aware
you to
there's actually
rethink.
gear scattered around on the island. So like,
Mhm.
but still, now all those Bokoblids are going to be levels higher. So
Yeah.
when you're facing a lot of black ones or the white and black ones, and it's going to be pretty difficult when you have nothing and you're trying to get the things that they have. Kind of hoping that a few bombs will maybe make them drop the gear and I'll quickly pick it up. I have no idea. It's gonna be exciting when I get there. Because I kept thinking, oh, I should gear up more. Why am I gearing up for Eventide? It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant.
Right.
Link goes back to his underwear. What are we talking about?
I guess you could give yourself more hearts.
Yeah, that is one thing
Yeah.
you could do. You could give yourself more hearts. And I don't know if it takes away. Does it take away if you took like an elixir or something that gives you the extra hearts? Does it take that away when you get to the island?
No. And what you can do is you can even, before you actually hit the beach, you can create a Cryonis platform in the water, and you could throw like a sword onto the island and then jump on, and then it takes away all your gear, but that sword will still be there.
Ooh.
So then you
Of
can
course,
have it.
Cap
Gotta try
Ferguson. Yeah, here we go. Cap
That's-
Ferguson with the master pro tips over there. FYI, your best weapon, you could just have it.
Yeah, you just have to be prepared to lose it by the end, because when they give you back all your gear, they'll take that one away. But
Well,
if
you might
fight
break
that
it
Cryonis,
at
it's
the
probably
end.
gonna break anyways. Let's be
I
honest.
guess.
So,
It's probably
Yeah.
gonna break.
Especially in Master.
Now you have me wanting to try
Especially
it
Master.
and then feeling guilty. I start off with like a level 40 sword.
It's a shame you can't throw armor because I mean I
Yeah.
tried master mode
Mm.
on Eventide Island. I did it like first, like when I had 3 hearts, and everything one shots you. So I spent hours and hours. Like one little mistake, like if a pebble hits you or something, if you just like fall like just a little bit too much, you're dead. Like no matter what. And that was fun, but also frustrating. So
Yeah, especially when I hit it early in the game. So I think because I know more about it, I'll be more prepared this time. But it's still, we'll see. I'm gonna get some abilities going to Varuta. I'll see what I do after that. Might go unlock all the towers. Then again, I'm not looking forward to the tower with all the whiz robes and guardians around it, because I feel like that's gonna be a nightmare right now. I just got a feeling it's gonna be a nightmare. Even though I know how to beat them, it doesn't matter, because if they hit me, I die. I can't make a mistake. So, anyways, I guess we'll get into our topics today, guys. We got a bunch of topics, three big ones. First one we'll start off with, I guess, with the topic that, at least in the Nintendo community, hasn't died almost since before the Switch came out at this point. And that is basically Nintendo's possible next platform. Well, they'll probably have a new platform at some point, but what must they get right for that platform? Nintendo confirmed, quote unquote, confirmed in an investors meeting that they do have new hardware in the works. They always have new hardware in the works, but they actually confirmed it because they said Nintendo accounts would move forward to it at a 2021 investors meeting. Bloomberg reported that they're increasing Switch production heading into year 7, which I think probably makes logical sense because they have this big game coming out. I don't know if people have heard of. They might need some extra Switches for that.
Bayonetta Origins.
Yeah, Bayonetta Origins. That's it. That's the one.
Yeah.
Love Bayonetta. But
Yeah.
then we got Nikkei out of Japan reporting that they're working towards new hardware in the second half of 2024. Might maybe locking in some manufacturing stuff for it. So basically, what do we like and not like about Switch, and what do we want to see maybe improved in the next platform? Do we even think the next platform will be like a Switch, or is Nintendo going to do that weird thing and we're going to get something completely different? Please, not a streaming stick. Please, not a streaming stick. What do you guys think? Who wants to go first? I don't care. Oh, silence from the crowd. Andres, you go first. You're right there, buddy.
Okay. I was trying to be quiet, so I was holding back.
I was holding back.
Well, I agree that it would be disappointing if it would be a streaming stick, but I'll also say this. Before the Switch was announced, and there was like those rumors coming from Eurogamer and Emily Rogers, and I saw the hybrid stuff, I thought it looked kind of dumb. But then when the Nintendo showed us the trailer, I was like, oh no, this is the best thing ever. So, if it is a streaming stick, I'll wait until Nintendo shows us that trailer and actually sells us on it and how they're actually going to utilize it, because maybe it's better than what we kind of perceive it as, right? That said, when you ask like what's like something different about Switch that I would want, because I mean I feel like Switch is like maybe the best Nintendo system ever. So I think they've done a lot right, but I'll say themes. There need to be themes. They teased it with white and black, and it's only been white and black. I don't think they're gonna give it to us on Switch, or if they do, it'll be with the next system at the same time. But I think themes will come with the next system whenever that happens.
Okay, that's a common thing people want, especially after the 3DS.
At least more colors.
More color, yeah, just dark and white.
We need music in the eShop, or the next Switch is going to be a colossal failure. right? Right.
There we go.
You know what's
Make
interesting?
or
When you go
break.
into
Get this
the
music
eShop,
going.
from the different games, they
Um,
have music too.
I think one of the best things about the Switch launch, I think it's yet to be rivaled, and it may never be rivaled, is the first year launch software lineup, where you started with Breath of the Wild and you ended with Mario Odyssey, and you had so many great games in between. I think just the planning of having that done and the years of work that it took to get there is really underrated. And I do think that Nintendo is probably starting to assemble that lineup now. Like you think it like, well, what could, why haven't we seen Mario Kart 9? It's like, well, I think it's because it's going to be on the next system. I think it's going to be a launch game for the next system, and they're just going to write out this DLC. I think Nintendo will have plenty of games for the current Switch through the life cycle, but I do think that's been a big takeaway for them of, we were able to get a really hot start out of the gate because of this big launch lineup. And I think they will have something equally strong for the launch of whatever's next.
I think that's interesting because like something I've kind of been talking about recently is something I've noticed, and I'm curious if you guys agree, is like if you look at like the last few years, like the last 3 or 4 years of Nintendo's like holidays, like they still have the big games coming out throughout the year, but like if you go like before the Switch era, or like just throughout most of Nintendo's history, the holidays usually has like 1 or 2 big internally developed Nintendo projects. And if you look at like the last few years, there are still good games, but most of them are like not from internal Nintendo, right? Like you look at this holiday just passed, we got Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Technically, that's Game Freak, right? They're not technically Nintendo. Bayonetta 3, made by Platinum Games, and then there was also Ubisoft's Mario Rabbids. Like those are all good games, good holiday releases, but they were not internal Nintendo. And it doesn't feel like we've gotten like a lot of internal Nintendo projects recently. And I think to your point, kids, probably because they're saving not all of them, because we're getting things like Splatoon and Xenoblade and Zelda, but there's some that they're saving for their next big system, it feels like.
Yeah, they've gotten a lot better, and Krysta and I have talked about this on our podcast a lot better at spacing out the releases throughout the year. We can remember when we were there, in the first quarter of the year, there might be like a game at the end of March, but until then it was nothing. And like we were saying, it's like, yeah, the holidays are over, we're ready to play something. And now we have Fire Emblem, which is great timing. Whereas in the past, you would just wait and get annoyed and maybe go play something on another system. On the Switch, they have really learned a lot about how to keep people on the system kind of year round.
The other thing they're really good at now with games is they usually have like something for every kind of player. So like Kit, you're saying maybe Mario Kart 9 will be like a launch game. That's something that is very much like a game that anybody could pick up, but they're probably also holding Metroid for that next system because they want to get like all of their really passionate fans on board right away as well. So they're smart about like, let's make sure we make, the general public kind of people that are dabbling in games really happy and the families happy, but we also want to make our, core fans happy as well. So they're probably thinking about that as well as they're developing that first year release schedule. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I think back to your themes request. We were talking about this recently on our podcast because we did like a retrospective on Wii U during the 10-year anniversary. And one thing that I think collectively, when we were talking about it and talking to other people, that people all missed was Wii U, even though it was like kind of bad and clunky, it did have some more personality, and Switch is very like straightforward. It's very bare bones. It's like you turn it on, there's your game, play the game, that's it. So it would be great to like not sacrifice the speed and the snappiness of Switch, but to like give it a little bit more of like that like homey Wii U personality. I think would be really nice. Like and like something like that I think would be really cool if they're able to get that balance right for the next system as well.
Yeah,
as long as they don't lose the speed, because that's one thing. Like I loved my Wii U. I played that thing almost to death before Switch launched, but that's the thing is like it takes almost like 2 minutes to get into a game from boot up, and it's the Switch. It's like it's so snappy, it's so immediate, and a lot of people complain about the themes. I guess it never bothered me because I'm not the kind of person who buys a console for like the console. I just want to play the games. I'm not like married to a specific brand or anything. That's why I'll typically have 2 consoles, but not 3, because it's like, well, what games interest me more? Well, maybe I'll get the Xbox 360, but then I'll get the PS4, not the Xbox One, because this is the one with the games I want. And Nintendo always has the games I want, but I don't know, like I don't spend that much time on the home screen. I just want to get in and play. So I guess it never bothered me. That speed is something that I value a lot, and Switch is just overall form factor I find really appealing, especially because I have a family. I've got a child who, competing for the TV is a real thing in a household with a family. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where I just felt like they really nailed something special with the sort of hybrid console, or the form factor of being able to dock or play handheld, and like a lot of people have drafted up really neat concepts where people are like, oh, bring back dual screen, or basically have a Switch 2 where the console is the Wii U gamepad again, but then you could take it. And I'm like, I feel like they really nailed something very precise that fits a very nice medium of like people who want to play handheld, people who want to play like their way. And that was a big part of their marketing, wasn't it? It was like play your way or whatever. But I felt like for many people, it doesn't make a difference. But for someone like me who, again, family, that is actually something that made a big difference. Being able to take that, or even being able to have a dock in one room here in like my office room where I can sit and stream, and having a dock downstairs and not having to have actual like 2 switches that I use. I can just take it upstairs, plug it in here, and it's already ready to stream. And there's no setup needed. Like I don't know, almost every facet of my life, Switch managed to just like fit into so perfectly somehow. So it's like there was like the perfect console. Like my needs are easy. I just want a Switch again, but better. That's about it. If they just made the exact same console, but they're like it's just better, like has better specs, whatever, I'd buy the hell out of it. Yeah. Like, yeah.
No, I totally agree with you. Like if they don't give us themes, it'll be one of those moments like, oh, okay, that's weird. Thanks, Nintendo. And then people complain about it on the internet forever, but it won't actually make a difference in terms of sales or our quality of lives, really. Like it's still going to be great. I guess for like that conversation, I think people talk about it a lot because you think back to the Wii U and the 3DS era, as you guys alluded to earlier, right? Like during that time we had themes on 3DS, and I feel that like a lot of the little things that we saw back then were in a small part because Nintendo had a lot of droughts. They had to rely on other things. Like there were more deals and things like that. And people complain about how there aren't as many deals now. And it's because, well, Nintendo had to do a lot more outside of the games end to try and retain us as fans. So that's why we saw a lot of those other little things. I would like to see themes, but to your point, I don't want to sacrifice all the great things that they've accomplished with Switch. So if it happens, great. If not, it's really not the end of the world.
Right. I literally never changed the theme on my 3DS. I like browsed them a few times, but I literally never changed the theme on my 3DS through its entire life cycle. Just because I don't know. I was just like, do I want to spend $2 on this? Or like, it just seemed like kind of pointless, I guess.
There were ones you get for free.
They're nice. There are free ones for sure.
There were free ones.
For sure.
Or
but I don't know.
Like your points on it or whatever they were using. Whatever. I don't know. Nintendo changed their system like 3 times in the last 10 years, so I had no idea what it was called. The Club Nintendo. I think
UI is just like very clean, and I kind of just like that. It's just very clean. It's very uncluttered. I've seen like so many fan mock-ups of like this would be a way better UI, and I'm like, it's so cluttered. I don't want clutter.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think
so
there's
do
a
we
happy
want
medium
the
to be had.
UI to stay the same for the next system?
Maybe not. Maybe have it like I wouldn't mind a little bit of personality. Like I said, I loved my Wii U. But the Wii U was relatively clean in its UI as well.
Here's what they could do. What they could do is kind of like, if this thing wants to work, no, it doesn't. What they could do is I don't know, kind of like more like phones. You can have it as clean as you want, or you can customize it. You can theme it if you want. You can theme the icons. You can theme, especially on Android, obviously, theme everything. But it's just kind of one of those things where I don't know why there's not a reason to have it as simple as you want or have it as more complex as you want. To your point, like you had a 3DS and themes existed, but you just didn't really use them. Well, it doesn't, why not have the option there? Or even like when you see some of these
UI mockups where fans think it's better. What I notice in a lot of those UI mockups is either easier to organize, like as an example, not having the ability to have folders more accessible. Like you have to go through like 2 submenus to get the folders right now, and folders weren't even part of Switch at launch. That felt really weird when we had folders on 3DS and Wii U. Like it was a really strange thing to not have folders. And now that we have them, to have them sort of in a submenu situation. So even though that to me a folder would look, folders look cluttered even on my desktop. I don't like looking at them. I'd rather see a clean icon. But for organization purposes, I can see why people maybe want that. And a lot of the other things I see in those fan mockups is mostly just more information about what they're doing. Like, they mouse over an icon for a game and it'll be like, hey, you left off in this area in the game, or you played the game for X amount of hours. I don't have to go up to my profile picture, then go to a submenu to find that. But then maybe have an option to turn that off if you don't want that information. So a customizable UI, I think would be really nice. Like maybe they start with the Switch's UI as like a base, give some familiarity, but then they go, but if you go into the settings, here's all these checkboxes and different things you can do to customize your UI if you want. I think that would be really nice. Also,
that's definitely a happy medium because like this is a very blanket statement. Options are always good. Control options, UI options, how much HUD you want in your game. Options are always good. So yeah.
And when Krysta brought up Wii U, I know this isn't coming back. It'll never come back. But Miiverse.
Yeah,
it's not coming back.
It's not coming back.
It's never coming back. But it was one of my favorite things to see Nintendo do, like create their own social network. It was really neat. Yeah, maybe I couldn't even believe Nintendo attempted it. It was crazy, but they did it, and it was awesome for the most part. A few things that need to be improved, but like it was really neat because you'd have like developers coming in and speaking like in the game threads and like giving information and asking questions. And while obviously that might have been more of a PR thing than the actual developer, it still created like this fan interaction that felt like we're interacting with employees at Nintendo. And hey, if my post got taken down, somebody at Nintendo saw it and knew it was inappropriate drawing, so they deleted it. So they're paying attention to us. They're actually reading this stuff. And it kind of coincided. What was nice about Wii U is you had the Miiverse thing, plus you had all the Miis running on screen. I thought that was cool. I don't know that it adds anything, but it just looked neat when you turned on your Wii U and saw all these Miis running all over. It wasn't really an additive thing. I guess maybe it made you smile when you turned on your Wii U. Maybe that was the additive. Create smiles. But they also had a user rating system. So it felt like the Wii U was very user-centric. Like we have user ratings in the eShop, so you can see like user reviews. You can't necessarily read them, but then you could hop over to Miiverse with that game and you can see what people are saying about the game there. So it was almost like it was kind of like sort of what Steam does a little bit, but a bit more intuitive. And I really like that because a lot of times you don't get context to user reviews, but you could get context. And then all of that's just gone, which, I mean, one could argue user reviews for Nintendo games are kind of pointless because I don't think I ever saw a single Nintendo release that was under 4.5 stars. I don't think that existed on the Wii U eShop.
Right.
What do you know? Nintendo fans like Nintendo games. That's, but it was still cool.
And we were the only ones buying the Wii U, so was the Nintendo fans.
I think a lot of the difference between the Wii U and the Switch generation is Nintendo really focusing and saying, like, what do we need to do for this to be a success? And look at what all the things that we did on the Wii U that were nice to haves that really didn't make any difference at all, or in some cases like became a problem. Like Miiverse moderation was a problem. Like Nintendo TV, nobody cared about that. They sunk a ton of resources into that. It was a waste of time.
Yeah, that was
so. They're saying like, well, we need to make a great system that plays great games. And I think also like the discussion of themes, it's like, well, could we have a developer make, 10 themes or a developer working on a really great game? They're going to choose the game. And Nintendo definitely realizes that as far as resources, they don't have Microsoft resources. They don't have Sony resources. They really need to focus on what they do best. And again, you get wistful for the things that you don't have. But I think that focus is why this generation's gone so well.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like Switch came out at the perfect time for me. So I already had 2 kids, but one was a little baby when during the Wii U generation, and so for the most part it's fine. But I found myself playing a lot on the gamepad. Well, maybe a cartoon's on the TV or something. during nap time. And when Switch came out, we had our third child, and it was such perfect timing because, yeah, I have multiple TVs in my home and everything, but when you have 3 kids, you're not just vanishing from them all day to play video games. Like, that's just what kind of, don't think that's really what you should be doing. Maybe pay a bit more attention to your kids. So, you're playing with your kids, and all of a sudden they start playing together, and they're playing a board game, and they're having fun. And you're like, oh, cool. I'll just grab my Switch quick and play some games right now. And this is the game you guys can't watch. I got headphones. It's all good. Which they finally added the Bluetooth headphone support. I don't know why that wasn't there at launch.
Yeah,
I don't understand that one. That's one that I never really understood. Because obviously it was in the Switch because they enabled it later. I don't know. Anyways. But if I had to think about like a Switch, like what I actually think needs to be an improvement that affects the ability to play games, like presuming the next system is an improved Switch, I hope they don't go away from this hybrid concept. I think they're onto something. There's a reason Steam Deck and other things are coming out, and people really like those. It's a good idea. This is a good idea. It hasn't run its course. I mean, I think it's the #1 seller in 2022, despite like PS5 being out for 2 years, and we're entering into year 7. It's people like this concept for a console, so I think it needs to continue with more specs. I think everyone knows, bump the specs up, see what happens then, because every generation has a little bit of an increase in specs at least. Even technically, the Wii was a little bit better than the GameCube.
There's 2 GameCubes duct taped together.
Yeah.
And
That's what they say. Right?
I remember, like, initially they were talking about maybe going up to like 4 times as more powerful back then, but they settled on, I guess, just double. But yeah, they're always at least a little bit more powerful. I've seen some people in the chat suggest that maybe the Wii U is more powerful than the Switch. That's not the case.
that doesn't make any sense.
Switch is more powerful. Breath of the Wild runs at 900p with better audio, apparently, compared to the 720p on Wii U. Pretty much every Wii U port is running at a better resolution. Like, for example, Mario Kart Deluxe is actually 1080p versus 720p on the Wii U. So, like, games do run better on Switch. And those games weren't even built for Switch. They were ported over.
Even load times. I remember Smash Bros on Wii U. Sorry, the load times were just egregious. Like it's you're waiting.
Yeah,
you're waiting
load
a minute.
times.
You make a cup of coffee while you're waiting for it to load and everything. Smash on Switch is just loads like so much quicker. It still could be a little faster, but it loads so much quicker than Smash on Wii U. And it's if you look, I remember seeing the launch trailer and being like, oh, that doesn't look that much like graphically better for like a next generation Smash game or whatever, and then seeing like side-by-side screenshots, and it's like, oh, okay, no, this is just like my rose-tinted Wii U nostalgia glasses here clouding how the game actually looked on. I think a lot of Wii U games look really good because they were designed with an art style in such a way to look good. Like Super Mario 3D World still looks gorgeous. I think it's a gorgeous looking game.
Yeah.
But that was like that's because you have the developers who are designing it specifically for this platform with its limitations in mind, and they're going to optimize it in a way that makes it look good. But yeah, for people to say the Wii U, people in the YouTube chat saying the Wii U is more powerful than the Switch, that seems ill-informed of an opinion.
Well, I mean, I guess people look at
that.
the size of the Wii U, and if it's like this bigger console, like it's an actual home.
Look at the size of an NES compared to a Switch. Like technology changes
Xbox,
things.
guys. That's the most powerful console in the world, didn't you know?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
it's
The
pretty
Duke
mind blowing
controller.
when you think about it, though, right? Like you look at how small the Switch is, and like it's a lot smaller than the Wii U. It came out 4.5 years later, and it's more powerful, which is really cool. Or if you look at it, like the jump from 3DS to Switch, like that's like maybe one of the biggest jumps we've ever seen, like from in terms of like graphical like abilities from one system to the next for our company. It's just interesting to think about.
Yeah.
But one other thing I'll add before I'll shut up. I feel like also some people look at like the Wii U, and its jump from the Wii was pretty substantial because Nintendo finally went to HD. And that makes a big difference.
Sure.
But Switch is.
I saw the Wii U comments in the chat. I just ignore them. I mean, at some point, if people want to be ill-informed, it's on them. The Switch being more powerful is not even a question. It's literally more powerful spec-wise, and all the Wii U games look better on it. It's the Wii U is an amazing system, but it was still running on the Power PC architecture, guys. Like, just keep that in the back of your mind. Modern architecture, Power PC that stopped being updated in the early 2000s. In fact, I think there was a fact out there that the Wii U was the only multi-core Power PC CPU in existence. So keep that in mind. Like, we're talking about an architecture that is pretty old. That being said, for an actual improvement that isn't just, oh, bump the specs or, oh, maybe a 1080p screen or something I think could actually be better. And I can say this now, I actually have some coming on my way to modify my Joy-Cons, is what about some Hall sensing sticks in the Joy-Cons? Let's just stop. Like, let's not have Joy-Con drift ever be a thing again. Just make it go.
I've seen people talk about the Hall sensors, but I'm a noob. So can you actually explain what the difference actually is?
Yeah. So the current joysticks, or most joysticks in general, like even the ones on here, like the Xbox Series controller, all of them, and I have drift on this controller even. They use physical components that touch each other and rub up against each other to create directions. Right? It's all physical components that can wear over time, or dirt can get into them and cause it to have issues. Sometimes just cleaning it out, if it's a dirt issue, will take care of it. But if it's actually wearing down because you're just someone who's really aggressive with your sticks, or it's just a controller, you just play a lot. Say you play 100 hours of games a week. I don't know who has time to do that anymore. Maybe I did when I was in high school. But I don't know how I had time in high school either. What was I doing during school? But that creates drift. That's how a lot of controllers work. And that's why you say Nintendo put out statements like, we've improved the Joy-Cons, but all controllers will have some form of drift. Hall sensing controllers are different because they use magnets. So the only time you're going to have a problem is if the magnetism ever goes out on it. The components don't physically touch. They're floating inside. So there can't be wear and tear. So that's why they claim no drift. Obviously, it's a newer technology, hasn't been out long enough to probably make a claim there'll never be drift. Magnets don't last forever.
So I was going to ask, does magnetism last forever?
Yeah. But I think they're using an electromagnet because it's required to be soldered to the board. At least the newer ones are doing. The ones that for the Joy-Con replacement ones aren't. They still use the ribbon cable and stuff. But they're. Yeah, so I'm just saying the technology exists, and it's technically existed for a while. It used to be really expensive. The fact that I can go to like Ghoulie Kit and buy Joy-Con replacements for like $15 that are Hall sensors makes me kind of feel like, and I know components are a finicky thing. Every penny matters at manufacturing when you're making at mass scale. But it would be nice to see that added, because I think one thing some people have said about Switch, between obviously having the plastic nubs that lock in your Joy-Cons, and sometimes those break off, especially if people put the Joy-Con straps on the wrong way. That was a whole thing for a while. Or even at launch when there was some Switch docks that weren't perfectly straight. So like if you left your Switch in it long enough, it might warp it a little bit. That was only at launch. It was this really weird thing where people got accustomed to Nintendo. Like, you're like the Nokia old school phone, man. You're the Game Boy. You can survive a bomb. Like, Nintendo stuff is always so durable.
Nintendo.
NES is still today. So many of them, you just fire right up, blow on that cartridge, stick it in, and it's still going to work. And people were having problems with Switch almost right out the gate, and they weren't really used to that. I don't think the failure rate was nearly as high as the internet makes it out to be. But it's still one of those that, like, Joy-Con drift is something I know I've experienced. Not on every set of Joy-Cons, but we got 3 Switches in the house. I've got 4 pairs of Joy-Cons I can't even use right now because the Joy-Con drift's that bad. And Nintendo of America, to their credit, is I could call them and get them repaired at any time. So I'll give them credit for that. But it's still one of those I shouldn't have to. You know, like, it shouldn't start drifting like 6 months after I got it, especially when I'm only putting in 15, 20 hours a week of gaming, and I'm not even using the Joy-Cons all the time. So I kind of feel like this is just something that is a quality of life improvement. Like, we saw the Switch OLED was a quality of life improvement, right? Better screen, finally gave us a usable kickstand. I'm glad they recognized that. I'm not really sure how that little plastic kickstand got up. Maybe it was a late edition. They just decided late, hey, why don't we make this work at tabletop? Let's throw a little plastic kickstand on the back, and it'll be good.
It's kind of neat that with the GoldenEye trailer, they actually showed the OLED with the kickstand.
Yeah. I'm liking some of the OLED advertising they're doing lately. It's nice because the OLED is such a sleek system.
It's one of those things I feel like would be hard to advertise for, because I was not sold on the OLED until I held one in my hand, and then I was like, oh, this is actually way better. Like how do you advertise how good a screen is when you're watching the advertisement on a different screen that's not as good as the one that they're at? Yeah, it's that seems like a challenge, but
I've just had this problem of my OLED. I haven't gotten an OLED yet because my Switch still works, and the OLED doesn't change my games, and I usually play in dock mode anyway. So, and you can get the Ethernet adapter, so you don't even need the Ethernet adapter the dock offers if you've already bought that. So, but every time I see an OLED, I'm like, oh my god, I really want it, really want it. If there's a Zelda one, that might be where I finally just give in. But yeah,
the Splatoon one is what broke me. I was like, oh god, those Joy-Cons are gorgeous. So, I ended up selling my launch day Switch, which I had still been rocking, and basically trading it in for the OLED after like transferring all my stuff. But it really is one of those improvements that it's like this I feel like was not captured. Like it's kind of impossible to capture this improvement other than the kickstand maybe. But no, I really hope if they do like continue the Switch form factor for the next console, I feel like the OLED screen's got to be like the standard model at least to go forward, because it's so much better. The first thing I did when I got it is I booted up Ori, just like a really colorful game, just to admire it.
I'll say that maybe one of the reasons I don't play in portable mode as much is because I feel like when I play in portable mode, it's like not as good of an experience for my game. So if I had an OLED, maybe it'd be a little bit more willing. But also to Nate's point about the Joy-Cons, I don't like playing my games with the Joy-Cons. One, I'm worried about breaking them. And two, when I'm holding, I probably should get a grip. But that's something else they could probably improve upon with the next Switch, though. Like just like something that's a little bit more ergonomic.
Yeah. Sort of these big paws.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I didn't have my grip on my Switch because it didn't fit in the case I had. So I've been playing some of the Breath of the Wild Master Mode without it, and I'm like, man, I kind of forgot without a grip like how crampy this kind of is a little bit with these big hands.
To the topic of the the Hall sensors, it's one of those things where they kind of, if they do go in and restructure like the technology for using with those, like they kind of can't acknowledge it, because then you're acknowledging that you had a problem.
Yeah, there was a problem.
And then the lawsuits start to roll in. So
it would just have something they do but don't talk about.
Yeah, it would be one of those things that they do and then just never acknowledge, and then somebody does a teardown and the info comes out that way.
And they're like, oh no, well, hey, good on them. They fixed it. Does this mean the problem? No, it's not.
And then they'll never respond to that again.
We're just doing normal improvement. We never said there was anything wrong with the original kickstand. We just replaced it. Nothing wrong with the original screen. We just gave you an OLED. Don't worry about it.
Right.
But
I agree with the form factor, though. Those things are. I mean, there's so much technology crammed into a Joy-Con, but it is hard to play when that's all you have. And obviously, you don't want to sacrifice like the compact nature of it. But I have to wonder if there's some compromise that could be made, or some
infrared. Bye.
Yeah, something else you can do to make that just a bit more playable.
Yeah, the infrared.
That is one thing that the infrared is like. It's a lot like the Wii U gamepad, where it's like they have all these features but no games use them, right? And the infrared is like what games other than maybe 1-2 Switch and Nintendo Labo actually used the infrared sensor?
Yeah, that's the thing with Nintendo too. Sometimes that we've noticed when we were working there, and especially on the hardware side, it's like it verges right on the cusp, and sometimes into like gimmick land. And they do a good job, usually of really being dedicated to like they were like, okay, we're going to really get dedicated to those, like motion control. We're going to have all these accessories like this, Wii Fit, whatever. But I feel like that's like in their nature to get a little gimmicky sometimes. And I think the Joy-Con is like almost too gimmicky, and it has all these like extra things like the HD rumble that we like talked about once and then never spoke of again when you're like milk that cow for the first time. So I hope that in the next Switch they like refrain from the gimmicky stuff and just really focus on like, how do people use these controllers, what are they using it for, and like improve the technology for those things, but rather than putting in like random stuff like infrared and HD rumble and those kinds of things that could just take away from it.
Yeah, the infrared is the extreme example of that, but I do feel like HD rumble is also kind of a flop. Like there were a couple games, and 1-2 Switch did the best with the marble mini game. But then I just played so many games where if you were playing in handheld mode and there was any vibration, it was like, it's like, whoa, what's going on? Like, how did this get past QA? Like, how did anybody decide this was a good idea? So it's such a cool idea, but I think developers are just like, there's not really a lot of point, or maybe it's a lot of work. So it just kind of fell by the wayside. It's a bummer.
Yeah, it's like when you have to go into menus to turn off the features that are included and sort of advertised as like things that you should be using in a controller or in a system. That's never a good sign. And I find myself always going into my menus to turn off HD Rumble because it was such a like distraction. And I play 98% of all my Switch games in handheld mode, so I don't want to be holding on to this thing that's like trying to vibrate out of my hands.
You know who doesn't have the giant hands now?
Yeah.
I know I have baby hands too. So when you were talking about like ergonomics, I was like, oh, I don't really have that problem. I don't really like the
Yeah, well,
offset
Fiance doesn't have
controller
that
though.
so.
I don't really like how the joysticks are offset like that.
Oh,
That's
you mean
That's a you problem.
the whole
That's a me
Yeah, that's
problem.
the
Yeah.
superior way though.
But
Yeah,
I mean, you know,
it's my
because of
hands.
Joy-Cons, what if you could just change that though? What if there were
Yeah.
options?
I mean,
just
this
talked about
probably
earlier,
the most
options aren't a bad
popular way
thing.
to do it, right? With the whole DualShock setup. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's consistent hand to hand. But I think the idea of like when Xbox and Nintendo does like the offset was that while your thumb's not going to always be on the stick, sometimes the primary thing you're hitting is the buttons. So then your thumbs are in the same position. I
Yeah,
kind of get the
we-
argument both ways. It and when you're playing multiple systems, it gets really confusing really quickly. My muscle memory keeps messing up whenever I switch back to PlayStation. It's I don't know. It's something I've grown accustomed to. This is just the way it's been, right? Like not like we've had a choice unless you want to get like a dongle to make your PlayStation controller work with everything. And then that feels weird because square, triangle, like those aren't the same buttons. And then if you use the Xbox controller on a Switch, well then the ABXY is out of order.
That
So
AXY thing messes me up all the time. I'm like, wait, where's A again? Where's Y? Every time. We should just standardize the
I
button
like what
mapping.
Nintendo does with their tutorials though, because they just show you the direction of the button. They don't say like the letter anymore, just so you know,
Yeah,
okay,
thank you.
bottom
That's
face
true.
button, right face
Yeah.
button.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
that-
yeah, when they show like all 4 buttons and highlight the one.
Yeah,
that's
they
like
did
such
that
a
in Breath of
clever
the Wild.
UI
That was
thing.
really nice. I like that. Yeah,
Mhm.
that was. Sometimes I think about that stuff. Nintendo's just a very interesting company when it comes to this stuff. Like talking about like features that maybe weren't fully thought out, or maybe they didn't like approach their developers and go, "Hey, do you guys have a lot of ideas for something like HD Rumble, or is there even a purpose to it?" Because then you have HD Rumble and they make this big deal out of it. They're shaking the cup and you feel the ice cubes and you play 1-2 Switch. And admittedly, in 1-2 Switch, pretty neat. 1-2 Switch is like a tech demo. I feel like it probably should have been a packing game.
It should have been back
I mean, the Wii Sports was the perfect tech demo for Wii. Like I felt like this was sort of a tech demo for Switch, but then this thing come out, and its Rumble doesn't bother me, and it's just better. It just is, and like even the trigger thing, like that's an idea. They went to the developers to go, oh yeah, it would be cool if there was a little bit of tension when you pull the bow, or you could feel a gunshot. And you know what? You could turn it off entirely too. So if people don't like that, and while you could do that with the Switch Joy-Cons, it's still like, but at least it feels like they talked to their developers before they said, let's put all this technology in this controller, because they're actually using it in a lot of games, which isn't really the case with a lot of the stuff, I guess, that Nintendo's done with some of the wacky things with the controls. Like I even think back to like the 3DS. I love the glasses free 3D, but how many of us just turned that slider off and said good day?
Yeah.
Immediately.
I would sometimes turn it on for like a minute.
2
playing
seconds.
a Link Between Worlds. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Turn it
Yeah,
back.
that's pretty. All right. Now to move on to actual
the
gameplay.
AR game, right? Where you're like you're shooting the heads and stuff. I did it for that. And then after that, I was like, okay, there's a reason this glasses free 3D TV thing's not taking off. Like maybe this is, I get it. You want to be the one that comes out with that Blu-ray technology like Sony did and popularize it, or the dual screen thing, touch screens. But like some things are just best left to being ideas. Maybe the Wii Vitality sensor was one of those things, since that never came out. Did you guys ever get a chance to use the Wii Vitality sensor? Did it actually ever function?
It's coming back.
I don't know. We only saw that same one
That's
picture
the
of
new
Mr.
Nintendo
Iwata.
hardware.
Everyone else-
2024 Vitality sensor. Switch Vitality sensor. Get ready.
Pack-in accessory.
Just an idea, but what if it's like an element of like a Switch VR setup? Like it's like they track your pulse, and maybe there's like a Metroid Prime 4 or a Luigi's Mansion 4 that take advantage of like the vitality sensing within a VR headset. Because
That
you can
was the
check your
original
pulse like from
intent
here,
of
right?
The
Yeah.
vitality sensor was
Well, like
that they
the
would
vitality sensor was what?
track your heart rate.
Keep track of your heart rate, basically. But we have ways to do that now with just like things that can go on your wrist.
The Apple Watch, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like I think there's just better ways to do it, and like they could release accessories that are just
Sure.
better at it and more convenient. Like who wants to feel like you're at the doctor's office while playing, your next Ring Fit adventure, right? Like,
Well, my
yeah,
blood
let me
pressure's
take
really
this
high
time.
playing Metroid.
Oh yeah, why don't you just hook up an IV too while I'm working out? That's just
It
It's
may
like
not
when
actually
We Fit would
happen.
tell you that you're obese. It's just a bummer.
oh,
Oh,
dude.
yeah.
And
Oh.
like you look in the mirror
That
and you
happened
go,
to
"Oh, I
somebody
don't
in
have
the
to
office.
now."
And then
Yeah, it happened to somebody while I was with this person in the office, and that was a real awkward moment.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
Heavy
didn't-
clothing.
didn't love
Heavy
that.
clothing.
Remember brain age when they would tell you your brain's age? It's like, oh,
Wow, you sure are
brain.
young.
You're a barely
I have the
functioning
brain of
human
an
being.
86-year-old.
Congratulations.
Thanks for letting me know that I'm close to
Yeah.
death. That's
Awesome.
Wait, what?
good to know.
Where am I?
Wait, what? Alzheimer's coming on way early. Holy crud! I didn't realize.
Fortunately, you can reverse that aging apparently, thanks to brain
By
age.
doing math.
Yeah, thanks to brain age. You
somehow.
just get better
Yeah.
at the games, and magically, I got the brain of a prepubescent teen. Awesome. Thank you so much. Oh man.
So I want to throw a question out at you guys. So we were talking about like things that maybe you should take out of the Joy-Cons because that might reduce costs, make it a little bit easier to just make an overall better controller. But what if they do this, and I'm not sure they will, but just an idea. Like, what if they just don't do the Joy-Cons anymore? Like, what if they give us a Switch where the controllers are attached? It still switches, there's still a dock, and maybe they just pack in like a Pro controller. Maybe the Joy-Cons don't have HD Rumble, but the Pro controller does, and it's kind of like, you can kind of get the best of the two worlds that people usually play, handheld and docked mode, but you lose out on the boxed in co-op and the occasional weird 1-2 switch kind of setup.
We also lose out like motion controls for Skyward Sword HD.
Oh yeah, motion
Yeah,
controls too.
Nintendo
Yeah.
really loves the Joy-Con. That
They
idea
do.
of share a Joy-Con and all those
They
like
love to
commercials where
share.
somebody
I
sits
will
down
say
at a
this.
restaurant and pulls it off. Like
I don't
they
get it.
love that stuff.
But my kids
Yeah.
do split Joy-Cons all the time.
Yeah.
They
yeah.
like that. They like the whole they want the family, and you're like, oh,
Impromptu
it's
gameplay
multiplayer,
get
out of the
together,
box.
Yeah.
Like their
We're,
favorite
we're
thing
having those
ever.
rooftop parties. It's happening.
We gotta
I
have
mean,
that Karen
yeah.
rooftop party.
Yep.
Yeah.
The concept
here's
works
the
though
thing, too.
because I was around Christmas time. I was visiting my mother, and I tell you, like it was like watching a commercial. My son sits down at the table next to his cousin, my niece, and he pulls off the Joy-Cons and hands one to her, and they start playing snipper clips together. And I'm like, this is literally watching a Switch commercial right now. Like
Yeah.
if there was a
Yeah.
Nintendo cameraman in here,
It's
they
like
would put
something that you don't
between-
see, but if you have
Yeah.
kids, like kids are
You're like,
like, I think what really take advantage of that split Joy-Cons.
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
You're on the
totally. It was very
airplane
cute,
with
too, just seeing the little
somebody,
kids,
and
you know.
you.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah, I
it does
tried the
have,
airplane thing
it
once with my
functions.
fiance, and she's like, "How do you use this thing?" I'm like, "I'm
It
sorry,
is
hold on.
teeny tiny.
Hold on, let me reach in
Yeah.
my bag. Here you go. Here's a real controller. I'll use both Joy-Cons.
Yeah.
That's fine."
If it was a little bit bigger and those or is it SR and SL? Is that the side?
But
Yeah,
that's why
side
they
outside R.
gave you
The top
they
ones.
gave you the thing to slide on. Remember
Yeah,
that nobody
still doesn't
uses
feel
and
good to
everyone
me.
lost the day after they opened their Switch.
yeah.
Oh, I've got mine. I've got
Yeah.
like a.
I've
bunch
got them
of
hanging over there.
I've
on
got
a-
like a
on-
dozen of
next to my Ring
those.
Fit Adventure ring. I got.
I mean, if they just like reduce the bezel on the next Switch, so like the screen is still the same size, but the system itself is smaller, and they make the Joy-Cons a little bit bigger, that might work because I feel like we need a little bit more space for the Joy-Cons so they can be better controllers for most people.
Yeah, probably.
Well, and the other thing too, though, is if they were also built in and they haven't fixed the Joy-Con drift, well, now you lost your whole system. You have to send your whole system in for it to get it fixed
That's
instead
true.
of just sending in. You know, you can take your controller off, and well, there goes that controller. I'll just
Yeah,
grab a new one. And
And if you don't have one, if the
Oh, good.
Joy-Cons are you know, maybe you're willing to go to Walmart and buy like a cheap PowerA controller
Right.
or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Just to play.
you know, it's you kind of lose half your system functionality.
That
if
is
it
one thing.
does-
That's like they deal with that with Switch Lite, right? Like
Mhm.
that's the thing with Switch Lite. They don't detach. I don't think the detachable controllers are really a problem. I think they're fine.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That makes a lot of money from them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I just
Yeah.
think they need to be maybe like something that happens is a lot is like I guess it's called I don't know. I guess what the internet calls the Joy-Con wobble, where they wobble a little
Mhm.
bit every time, almost like they get a little loose. So maybe like a better rail system or or something that's a bit more solid, or a redesign on that front. Not that they didn't put a lot of design hours into it. I'm sure they did, but it's hard to test like years of use, and what's going to happen without just getting it out in the world. So maybe something like that would be nice. I don't know. There's like
They
a
could
lot
probably
of
put like grips. Like you see how like it extends out here, right? Like
Yeah.
the Joy-Cons, like when you put that's my skin, but like when it puts into the dock, this is all sticking out. Like they could just make like the grips bigger and it could still fit into the dock the way it does now, and the controller would still be bigger without making the system bigger. So I mean there is room to add a little bit more space. Maybe it's more comfortable with the ergonomics there, and it could fit
I think
maybe a
when
better
they
rumble or something.
When they didn't add that beef back there, I think they were thinking of people holding it sideways and playing. That maybe it'd feel awkward to hold. But I don't know. My kids don't care. I don't think they care either way. I got some third-party ones that got bulk back there that use sideways, and they're fine with it. So maybe it's a little
satisfy out
overthinking
of
on their
business
part.
if you go all in on that.
And maybe they think it just looks sleeker this way because you got that nice flat back and the commercial. You spin and the light hits it just right. I don't know. Sometimes it could be a marketing thing.
I know one quick thing. I think one of the things that I think most of us here don't want to see though is them going back to two different consoles, like handheld and tabletop. Just because
being handheld home console.
Yeah, handheld home console. Sorry.
I mean, are we going back?
We're going back to tabletops. Yeah.
Well, they had a tabletop system.
Yes.
Remember?
Yeah.
Do you
No,
really
actually,
remember?
maybe I don't. But
Virtual Boy.
yes, that's what I was thinking.
You had to step that
We
up
don't
and
talk
say-
about that.
But yeah,
We don't discuss such things.
Well, let's go back to the arcade
There
cabinets.
was
How about
three
that?
at that time.
But so I think part of what Kit said was with the lineup. I think part of what allowed them to do that though too is they were focused on one system. They didn't have to spread their
Over
resources.
time.
They didn't have to spread their resources over two. So you'd have it's almost kind of like when they had the Game Boy and the NES, or the whatever the equivalence was, they would kind of put a banger out over here and then put a banger out over in this one because they had to keep two systems alive. I think with the single system, I think it helps them in just focusing their games.
I don't
on
think
that.
they can get away from a single system if they don't plan to ever be going after PlayStation 5's audience. Because bottom line is PlayStation 5 and Xbox are propped up by third-party games, and the first-party games are more of an ancillary thing, adding on top. And you can see this in the sales charts. Like, what's the best-selling PlayStation game every year? Call of Duty. What's the best-selling Nintendo game every year? Mario Kart 8. Like, what's the next one after that? I don't know. What other big game came out? Splatoon 3 last year. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, fastest-selling Nintendo game of all time. Oh, it's another Pokemon game. Pokemon Arceus. Oh, it's Kirby. Forgotten Land. Best-selling Kirby. Like, all the leading sale games for Nintendo are Nintendo games, typically not the third parties. I mean, a third-party game selling 1 million units, we like celebrate it like it's a big thing. But Nintendo's games, that's like, oh yeah, 1 million units, we might not make a sequel. So it's interesting looking at the dynamics that Nintendo really probably it's probably started back in the N64 era, really, when they started losing some of the third-party support. When they wouldn't get off cartridges right away. Nintendo is a company I think that's really propped themselves up on their partnerships with third parties, where they get some of those exclusive games in for timed exclusives and stuff. The Octopath Travelers, the Monster Hunter Rise, etc. This generation, other stuff. Live Alive last year. Live Alive.
Yeah.
Live Alive.
Is that how it's okay? Yeah. Me and pronunciations is always wrong, and when the words are spelled exactly the same,
It's tricky.
It is tricky.
No judgment on that.
Well, let me ask you guys a question. Because I made a video on Tears of the Kingdom, and some people were making fun of the way I say Great Plateau. Is Great Plateau wrong?
No, Great Plateau.
Well, you just said something different.
Oh, did I?
Plateau.
You say it
Well,
again.
I mean,
You
I
say
guess
it
if I'm
again.
saying it quickly, I'll say plateau, but like it's like plateau, like
Plateau.
It's fine.
It's like
Long
the emphasis on the
Plateau.
first syllable.
It's
versus
not like
the
me
second
trying to say the producer of Zelda's name that I've been avoiding saying today because I know I butcher it.
AGM.
Well,
Yeah.
99% of Nintendo employees butcher it too, so don't
butcher
feel
it.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
That's reassuring.
You,
Yeah.
guys, you see, listeners, don't rag on me.
Ayanuma, we've heard it everywhere.
Yeah. Aoinuma.
I'm always like,
Aoinuma.
I know
That's
what
not his
I'm
name.
wrong. Okay. Edgy Emanama. Look, he's the guy who produces Zelda and has been doing it since after Majora's Mask. All right.
Does he have the toughest name? Yoshio
No.
Sakamoto, Shuntaro Furukawa. I mean, it's I just kind of sounded out Aoji Aonuma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
So-
congrats. You can say it correctly.
But I can't say Great Plateau apparently.
I'm
So.
gonna, here's the thing. I'm gonna meet him one day and do an interview, and I'm just, hi,
Sir.
hey, you made Zelda. Awesome. How you doing? Let's
Zelda
do this
producer.
interview because I can't say your name.
Right.
I'm sure he's used to hearing it butchered, but still, I don't want to be that person that butchers it. Right? I think I might just take a language course at that point and just beat it into my head for like a week straight. All right. So speaking of Zelda, we got a topic here about Tears of the Kingdom because we're just over 100 days. I think it's like 105 days, 104 days away from release. And I guess I want to take like a temperature gauge around the room. How are we feeling about Zelda? This is the next, I would say, system selling game from Nintendo. I don't want to say major. We got Kirby coming up. We got Bayonetta. And we want to undercut that stuff. Tales of Symphonia Remaster, I think, is coming as well. And actually a number of games all the time. I mean, one game that I would probably rather talk about would be Hollow Knight, but it's a sour spot for many people since we still don't have a release date. So,
They might
Tears of the
announce it
Kingdom.
in the Xbox Direct today, though. But
Yeah, maybe we'll get lucky.
maybe
We'll get lucky in the
Fingers
Xbox.
crossed,
Because I mean, we did hear about it the last Xbox thing. So maybe we'll hear about it.
Exactly.
So, how are we feeling about Tears of the Kingdom? Because for us, outside looking at it, it felt a little weird. Obviously, Breath of the Wild, we knew quite a bit about it like 9 months out from launch because of E3. It doesn't really feel like we know a lot. We've had 3 teaser trailers, 90 seconds or less, lots of questions, not a lot of answers, and a lot of people wondering, when are we going to see, like, maybe there'll be a direct in February, but even then, that's like 3 months from launch. It's weird to not know this, like, hardly anything about Zelda. So how are we feeling about Zelda right now?
So we did a podcast a few weeks ago, our predictions for 2023. You should check it out. And we talked about this. I had 2 predictions on Zelda. The first was that we would get a lot less information on this game before launch than we did with Breath of the Wild. And the reason is, you're not resetting what Zelda is. People understand what this format is. So there's a lot just kind of getting people on board with this type of game that you need to do. And also, I know because I worked on the original, that team is really concerned about going too far on sharing information and, what they consider to be a spoiler versus, what other people might consider to be a spoiler. That was strange. They feel really strongly about that. So I just feel like they don't feel compelled to go as far as they did with the first game, as far as showing information. My other prediction was I do think this game will feel like a mild disappointment to a lot of people because you just can't recapture the newness of Breath of the Wild, playing Zelda in an entirely new way in this game that feels like it came from the future on this great new piece of hardware. Don't get me wrong. I think Tears of the Kingdom will get great reviews. It'll be like 9s and 10s. It'll be an outstanding, excellent game, but it's not an entirely new thing in a series that you've loved for 30 years, like Breath of the Wild was. So I think for some people, depending on what your expectations may be, you might feel some disappointment, is my feeling.
I think that you won't get that like thing that happened with Breath of the Wild where like for 2-3 years afterwards, people are like, 15 things you still haven't tried yet in Breath of the Wild. And like,
we're still getting that.
We're still
exactly.
GameSpot is still making those
7 years. And that kind of like playground conversation about, hey, did you do it this way? Did you try it that way? Like that was a magical thing that happened only because Breath of the Wild was so new, so novel, so different than any Zelda game we've ever played. So much of it was focused on like experimenting and exploring your own way in that world. They're going to rebuild that world in Tears of the Kingdom. So you're going to know what to expect. You're going to know like you can do these things, or that general formula of discovery just might not be possible with a game that's a sequel. I differ a little bit from Kit on the prediction around the information. I do think we're going to get something before the game launches.
I didn't say nothing.
All right.
Just left.
We've done this prediction like 5 times, and every time she's like, they're gonna do something. Of
I
course
think
they're gonna do something.
they're
Well,
gonna
there won't be a
do.
public event to play it. I can
No,
probably
there's
see-
not going to be a public event to play it. Absolutely no.
Not like
I
an
don't
E3
think so.
And
But
I also wonder, will anybody in the media play this game before it comes out? Will anybody outside of Nintendo play it before it comes
for
out? I don't
reviews,
know.
probably.
I'm
Well,
not
Can
going
we
to
get a
reviews,
treehouse?
but yeah, like at least a treehouse segment would be nice.
Yeah, maybe we'll see Chico burning some stuff up in a treehouse segment. That would be great. I love that.
Yeah, the
I do.
treehouse segments are
They
great.
do need to tell us a little bit more about like what will make this game different than Breath of the Wild, because I would say they might also be feeling like, hey, we probably can't recapture the magic again, so we need to talk about some like the differentiating stuff. They showed some of that like sky stuff for like 10 milliseconds. They need to go a little deeper on that, I think, to sell people
Yeah,
on
don't really
like,
know what's happening there.
exactly. To sell people on like what is the actual differences, because I think that's going to be like a point of confusion if they don't do that, and they probably realize that. So at least I think we'll see a bit more around that. But yeah, I do think that it's nearly impossible to capture what we all experienced with Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, I think there's some things they could do potentially. I mean, there was a patent for this, so I don't, patents don't always really mean anything's going to happen, but there was a patent about like Link firing arrows while falling through the sky, shooting them in other directions that we can't in Breath of the Wild, because Breath of the Wild with the slowdown mechanic, and it's just you're shooting one direction. We can't like dive down and shoot straight down or shoot straight up, and it kind of made some people wonder, hey, wouldn't it be really cool if there was like this giant aerial combat that happens where you're fighting a dragon or something midair? Would that be a wow moment? And I go, well, if it's executed in that engine with that physics, I don't know how that's not a wow moment, because how the hell did they pull that off? That is awesome. But I don't know if there's going to be anything that crazy in this game. Like, what could they do that's going to wow people? Is it enough to, okay, we don't have the Sheikah Slate abilities, but now we have these new arm abilities or whatever they are, and they do some crazy thing with that in the physics engine, and it looks really cool. Is that going to be enough? Like, to me, I think a massive fight in the midair would be a pretty big wow moment, because we don't have a lot of those like midair fights like that in games. But that would still only be like a microcosm of the game. It's not like you're doing that all the time. Like Breath of the Wild's wow moment was you walk out and look at this. Like, they literally do it from the moment you walk out of the cave, Shrine of Resurrection. So it's interesting what they could do, or if they're just going to bother to not try to wow us and just go, look, we're making another Breath of the Wild, and we're just going to make this the best damn game it can be. We're going to fix things that we think we got wrong the first time. We're going to do things better, and ideas we didn't have time to implement before because we were too busy working on the actual engine of the game and just making all these things function. Make sure it doesn't break when you're using stasis and a bomb arrow and a magnesis back to back to back to back, and then throwing out some op drive, like making sure the game doesn't actually break when we do all that stuff. And they perfected all that. So now maybe it's okay. Now that we did that, let's focus on the content. Maybe let's focus on a more in-depth story. Let's focus on, maybe we bring dungeons back in a unique and fresh way. And it's less about, let's not worry about wowing people. Let's go with, when they turn this game off, one, they want to keep playing. And two, when they're done, I think that's my favorite game of all time. But they can't tell you like a specific moment. They can't go, oh, it's the physics. Oh, it's the world. They just go, that was Breath of the Wild, but significantly better. And I think that might be good enough.
I think
For some people. I don't know if it's going to be good enough for the sales charts and the momentum. Obviously, launching with a new system that was a hot thing helps.
It's going to do well. It's tough to say when they began development in earnest, right? Because we know they were working on the next game in 2017 already, right? But there's like, for example, they've told us they began working on Breath of the Wild in 2013 in earnest, but we know they were working on the next Zelda immediately after Skyward Sword, right? So there's always kind of like that window where we're not sure how much they're actually doing, if it's just concepting and thinking about different ideas, and if they're actually like working on it. But I think the point still stands, though, that we are looking at the largest gap between mainline Zeldas ever. And they are building off of Breath of the Wild as the base, right? So I think that they have a huge advantage in terms of making a new Zelda game with a lot of polish, a lot of content, more so than previous entries. So I think from that perspective, they have a lot going for this game, right? So I feel that they're going to do a pretty good job. And, something that I was kind of paying attention to recently, because I kind of been looking back at like different things about Breath of the Wild, like, interviews and things like that. And something that stood out to me is how they came up with a new sort of like process for developing games, where they work on the game for a while, then they all convene, play the game for a while, talk about it, and then build off of that. And it's kind of like this cyclical thing. And there was some debate about even doing this process at first, because they were worried this would slow down development. But what they said in their interviews is that actually, well, they ended up speeding things up, because we were able to come collectively think of ideas together and, come up with better ideas as a team. So that was a fairly new process for them. And that amounted to Breath of the Wild, for many people, one of the greatest games ever made. So now they're going to utilize that process again, maybe even do a better job of it this time around with more years into the process, and they're building off of that base of Breath of the Wild. So from all those perspectives, I feel like there's a lot going for this game. I do also recognize there is sequelitis, right? Like, I think if you look at, like, for example, God of War and Horizon, those are like, their sequels are incredibly good games, but it doesn't seem, and this is my own subjective opinion, to feel free to disagree, but I feel like those games haven't had as much of an oomph or like a pop in terms of social media compared to their initial ones, right? So likely Tears of the Kingdom is probably going to fall in the same boat, but they've also taken a longer time with Tears of the Kingdom. Those games came out after Breath of the Wild. They're already out. We're still waiting for Tears of the Kingdom. So I'm just kind of really curious, how it's going to be received. To your points, like, maybe it's going to be a little bit not as impressive, not as surprising, because it's, same world, same art style, still based off Breath of the Wild. There isn't a new system, so that there's that to kind of keep in mind as well. But I don't know. I'm optimistic. I believe in the Zelda team. I think the Zelda team is the best developer in history. So I'm gonna say that I'm gonna play this game, and I'm gonna go into it thinking it's gonna be my favorite game ever. So
yeah, I mean, I'm a big Zelda.
My opinion might be a bit skewed because of just how stupidly massive a Zelda fanboy I am. But I think also the largest gap in like between mainline games, to that point, the scope of these games has just increased so dramatically. Like, even Skyward Sword compared to Breath of the Wild, an average playthrough of Skyward Sword start to finish, it's like a casual playthrough is probably going to run you like 30 to 40 hours. It's like my first playthrough of Breath of the Wild was 300 hours. I've since sunk more than 1,500 hours into that game. I've since it launched, I have always had a save file going, basically, and I'll just have it sort of as a secondary game, at least, while I'm playing other games, something to kind of just fall back on. It's pulled me in. So the scope of the game has increased so dramatically from what mainline Zelda games used to be. And I think that contributes a lot to why this game's taking a long time. But also, I think that the silence is, and again, this is my weird Zelda fanboy bias, but I think the silence has kind of intrigued me more about it, because we know they've taken this long. We know they have a solid, amazing foundation to build upon, and they're taking years to even say anything about it. These are, as you said, some of those talented developers in the world. They're not just doing nothing for 6 years, right? Mm-hmm. So that silence, that mystery, has kind of kept me pulled in, being like, well, then what is different? What is new? And that silence is almost marketing the game to me.
Their apartment buildings, and we're throwing rooftop parties with Switch.
Oh, right. that's what they were doing
in COVID, right? They weren't developing; they were playing games.
But it's just that drive for me to know, like, is what's keeping me counting down the days until this game launches, right? There is something to be said for mystery being like intriguing, right? I don't think they're going to do nothing, though. To your guys' points, I think probably in the next couple months we're going to see like marketing kick off into high gear. But even with Breath of the Wild, like, a lot of people complained that, oh, maybe they're showing too much, maybe they're talking about this game too much. But then when you actually get your hands on the game, almost everything they showed pre-launch was just the first like 4 or 5 hours of this game. Mm-hmm. It was like everything was just pretty much just the Great Plateau, and it felt like we had seen so much of this game, but it was just this tiny slice. So I like anticipate that
like
kind of being the case again.
in the intro area.
I mean, the Great Plateau it was an amazing section of the game. It's my favorite tutorial section of any game ever, because I think it just is just this sort of condensed version of the world. And playing in it, like if you look at Skyrim, for example. Sorry, this is a little tangential. You play Skyrim, which is also an excellent open world game. The first hour, like the first tutorial of that game, you're going through a very streamlined sort of scenario where it's like, okay, this dragon attacks this village, and then you're fighting through these caves, and it's this straight linear path, and then they just drop you, and they're like, okay, now you're in the open world, go have fun. And there's sort of a disjointed nature there of like, you're in this very linear, very very well considered scenario, and then now you're in the open world. This is almost like two different games. In Breath of the Wild, it's like, okay, here's your tutorial section, but it is essentially just still the same open world gameplay you're going to be doing. It's just condensed. And I think that was just like the perfect way to do it, the perfect way to sell people on this game and get people engaged and pulled in and want to keep going, right? So I mean, I have no idea how Tears of the Kingdom is going to open, but I kind of hope that they have something as engaging and consistent with the rest of the gameplay as what that tutorial was. I say tutorial, a little loosey goose. Take a drink every time I say tutorial.
Hold on.
I'm done. I'm done talking.
What are we? Is it vodka? Is it whiskey? What's the poison? Hold on.
Nothing that hard. You'll die.
Nothing that hard. We'll die. Okay.
It's not noon here yet.
Yeah.
There is such thing as water poisoning too.
5
You can
o'clock
drink too much
somewhere,
of
right?
that.
True. A shot of espresso. You'll be vibrating.
There we go. We got to pep up for the rest of the day, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, how do you think they'll start the game though? Like, do you think it'll be exactly the same? My theory is it'll be like
in
a
the
long
sky.
cutscene. Yeah.
I think it's going to be in the sky. They're gonna want to get you into that sky part of that's the only thing they've shown us. It's got to be the new thing that they're working on, this like skybox mechanic, whatever it is. And I imagine like a sky island, sort of like Skyloft, that's going to replace the Great Plateau. You can play around on there, and that's your sort of loosey-goosey tutorial. And then you like dive into Hyrule again. That would be great. That's a great opening.
It would be cool to dive in the
I would
like you
love
don't
that.
start in Hyrule, you dive into it. That would be kind of
That would be a really like wow opening. That would be awesome. And you can see like the world sort of beneath you as you're flying through the sky, and that introduces you to that new mechanic, whatever that mechanic is or looks like, feels like. That would be cool.
You know what's interesting? Like when I think back to the Great Plateau, like when you explore that, right? Yeah,
that was weirder.
I think I'm just not gonna bother. But like when you're playing through the Great Plateau, there's like this, you can't jump off, right? Like you see like there's like this cloud barrier, almost like this fog, and you're not able to actually jump off until you get the glider. Well, what if like the moment in Tears of the Kingdom, maybe there are a series of islands that are connected, or it's one big area, like you said, but that moment when you can finally jump off, the clouds clear up. So I think we've seen in some shots we can't see down below, but then others we can. Maybe the beginning you can't see down below, but once you accomplish a certain amount of tasks, the cloud barrier opens up a little bit. And that moment that you dive down is the equivalent to that moment you first jump off the Great Plateau.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's equivalent to the title screen where you come running out of this chamber and you see the hill and you overlook the Great Plateau and everything like that. And
you need that delayed intro with the music and then the logo, and then you get all those goosebumps and maybe cry a little bit, because that's what happened to me, and it was amazing.
If you jump off and it wide shots it, and you're seeing this massive world with like a billion sky islands plus Hyrule. That's mountain looking all messed up. And then does the Tears of the Kingdom thing. Then immediately after, the bird thing flies in and Link goes.
Rivali crushes you. Oh no!
Laid on a loft and splat.
The ghost of Rivali comes back. He says, "Look, I'm not done here."
We don't throw a lot of comedy in, but when we do,
yeah,
little slapstick style there.
Oh yeah.
Hey Link, welcome back.
There's actually a pretty good amount of comedy in previous Zeldas.
There's been moments, yeah.
Does
Skyward
Breath of the
Sword had
Wild
a
lose
lot of
it?
Yeah, like
comedy, like that whole like
Groose,
Sky
like-
Academy, Groose. Yeah,
No, the
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
Groose high school drama
yeah.
thing, that was
that was the best. My
that was
favorite.
great.
Link has to
Groose
wake
Land,
up
everyone.
too. He has to be asleep in the beginning in the sky world,
Well, I
and then he
mean,
has to like wake
tradition.
up.
It's
Yeah,
tradition.
open
My
his
theory is
eyes.
that he's incapacitated and wakes up from his mini coma.
Well, he's always like in some
Was
sort of.
he wakes up with his
deep
arm
slumber.
already messed up, and then that whole cutscene with Ganondorf is actually a memory. We're going back to memories again. I don't know.
I
if we should-
personally would prefer that it's a cutscene that explains what happens. He gets injured, he's saved, and there's like a surgery to get that arm set up, and then he wakes up from that table
Surgery.
ready to go.
Sounds like
That's right.
cyberpunk.
We're bringing in that VR surgeon game
Yeah.
at the beginning.
Well, maybe surgery is the wrong word, but they're gonna have to do something to him because he does get messed up,
Operation. All right.
and it'll answer the restart, so you'll have 3 hearts again and no stamina.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. All right, so let's get into our last topic. This is just kind of about what's going on like Nintendo outside of talk a lot about video games, talk a lot about the systems and all that stuff. But what about all this other stuff going on? Because Nintendo's really done an excellent job expanding their, I guess what I kind of call it the Nintendo extended universe. Because we got the Mario movie obviously coming out on April 7th, so that's a big deal. Probably going to do really, really well at the box office. And, you know, I don't know what's coming after the Mario movie. A couple Universal parks coming. Well, one already opened out in Hollywood, another one opening down in Orlando. Obviously, we have the one out in Japan open as well. I don't know if they're going to be any more after that, or if those are like the 3 parks they're going to stick with. Obviously, those are going really well. They have planned Donkey Kong expansions that were announced. I don't know when those are done. I think there actually is a timetable for the one in Japan. I don't think there is one for here yet. Obviously, they expanded more into the mobiles game market this generation. Even though they recently closed on Regalia Lost. They gave us plenty of warning at least for it, but that was, to me, a little sad because it was maybe their best original mobile game that Nintendo was involved in. So I really sad to see that one go. But they still have other successful ones still going on. Fire Emblem Heroes, right? And then Animal Crossing Pocket Camp still going. Miyamoto continuing to tell us for like 15 minutes that we should play Pikmin Bloom before he tells us Pikmin 4. Thanks, Miyamoto. I'm glad that you at least said Pikmin 4 at the end, because if you would have just made a 15-minute Pikmin Bloom segment in the middle of a direct, I would have just cried. I love it. It's cool. I love knowing where you're walking around out there in Kyoto and stuff. It's cool, but also we get it. Pikmin Bloom, it's out. We know about this.
It exists.
It does exist, but
It
what else is
exists.
like coming next? We haven't actually had like another big mobile game from Nintendo in a bit. So, well, you know what's going on there. Obviously, Lego sets. They've been heavy on the Mario stuff, which has been awesome. The Mario Lego sets are fantastic. The question block, just the actual sets, the Luigi set, all of them have been really, really great. What's coming next there? We're going to get more than Mario. Like, hey, it's really cool. I've been waiting forever for Nintendo to do stuff with Lego. Now they are. So, when are we getting those Zelda sets? When are we going to get, new Pikmin game? Are we going to get Pikmin set to go with it? There's so many opportunities. So what do we think about the future of Nintendo's expansion beyond what's currently known? Like, what do we think is coming in all these different areas? I know it's a lot of areas wrapped into one, but I'm sorry. I don't know. When I was coming up with this topic, it just new ideas kept coming up and I just put them in a list. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, I worked with that team a lot when I was at Nintendo, and the whole like Nintendo business strategy, and I'm sure it's still the business strategy now, even a year after we've left the company, is like this 3-pillar thing. So they have the games, and then they have the entertainment as like one of the big pillars. So that whole idea of like doing stuff outside of how to get people into the Nintendo universe, not through video games, but through these entertainment properties, is like a massive 1/3 of their business. So yeah, you're seeing it play out right now. It started with like more so on the merch side, like you were saying, with partnerships like Lego and Uniqlo and Levi's and sort of that kind of area. And then it really kind of took off with the Universal parks. Obviously, the one in Hollywood is opening next month, so that's exciting. And then the movie was like sort of the last one that I saw become a big thing right before I left. But yeah, that is like a major part of how they view the business in the Nintendo's business in the future is like, we need to find ways to get people into the Nintendo brand, like aware of what our characters are and what our IP looks like, but not through video games. Like, how do we do it through these other ways? Because not everybody's going to be buying a Switch and playing video games. They want to, reach those people that may not be, gamers. So yeah, I can only see them doing more. I think this is literally just the beginning for them. They started with their most popular IP, which is Mario, obviously, which is why you see Mario everywhere and all of the different like expansion things. But I believe that they're going to be continuing that and like doing that for all of their other like major characters. So I think Zelda is next. So we'll see how that, especially with this new game coming out. So we'll see how that plays out. But that was always really fun. And when I worked on all those things, because it just gives you like a glimpse into stuff that's not video game marketing. You're marketing like all these other products, which is pretty cool. But I'm excited. I think it's cool that Nintendo is doing all this. I think it helps them stay relevant with like bigger audiences. And I hope they continue to do that.
Well, of all the different things, Nate, that you outlined, I think, the TVs and movies is the biggest opportunity. And I do think they took probably a cautious approach to that, knowing, how big the impact could be on the company and the IP with Mario. They're financially invested in that movie. So I think they did want to see, is this going to turn out okay? Are we going to be happy with the process and the results? And I think, based on the early indications, I think they probably are happy. My prediction is that movie is going to make $1 billion and be a super smash hit. So I do think that's going to open the gate for them to do more with different properties, and also, maybe spin off. Like people talk about, will there be a Donkey Kong movie, based on what we see in the Mario movie? I think that's a good idea. I do think they have a very particular way that they want to do business, though, which I think is ultimately good, and that it'll give a high level of quality control where, Mr. Miyamoto is so involved in the Mario movie. He's like a producer, and he's working with Chris Meledandri on all the creative. I don't think you'll see, just the market getting flooded with Nintendo TVs and movies, but I do think that there will be more based on this. And there's so many great video game success stories in this space now. With, Last of Us is doing great numbers. And Sony's kind of following that same path, where Neil Druckmann of Naughty Dog is super involved in that TV show. It does feel like we're kind of, I don't know if you can call it a golden age, if everything up to this point has been a little bit iffy, but it does feel like people are starting to solve that. And Nintendo is just in such a good place to capitalize on it.
Yeah, excuse me, princess. Come on.
There was that too.
What do the rest of you guys think about Nintendo stuff? Like the Zelda movie next? There has been some speculation out there, or rumors or something about Zelda movie maybe being a thing. Animated, I believe, was what we were thinking. Although I prefer live action. It's just my preference for Zelda. Feels like it could be like that Witcher TV show or Lord of the Rings. Like it just feels like it could be that big of it, but it reminds me of like Nintendo going that far out of their comfort zone to make something that hardcore. It's kind of like Miiverse. It was a really shocking thing to see them even attempt a social network that was very un-Nintendo. Like I don't foresee that. But what do the rest of you guys think?
So, I think eventually, yeah, there's got to be something Zelda, right? Like, absolutely. If you ask me what I want, right? What I want is either a anime Zelda movie that's in a Studio Ghibli like style, like that's like what I would want, and also maybe like a live action Lord of the Rings Witcher-esque kind of thing would also be really cool. But what I think makes the most sense is probably something that's more like in the Mario movie style, the Illumination Pixar kind of style. Because I think that offers them a little bit more flexibility. And maybe they don't want to necessarily have Zelda be compared to The Witcher or Lord of the Rings. Like I think in terms of it being like a live action like series, like there's maybe they don't want to put themselves in that conversation. Because also Zelda is not always going for like the realistic look. Like Zelda is a little bit more on the the fantasy side, a little bit more like there's the dark, but there's also the lighthearted. So I feel like they're probably their best bet is to go in the that style. Also, that can still go mainstream, right? Like I would love it for them to do an anime movie, but even though I feel like that would match Zelda style, unfortunately, anime is just not nearly as mainstream enough if they want to capture that really large audience. So I think basically similar sort of setup to the Mario movie, but maybe with a little bit more of a serious perspective, but still somewhat lighthearted. So that's what I sort of think is happening for Zelda. And I agree. I mean, I think this is just kind of like the tip of the iceberg. If the Mario movie is successful, they're going to build on that. And right now, we'll probably have to wait years before we get another movie. I don't really think it's going to happen like the next year or even 2 years from now. But, down the road, let's say 10, 15 years from now, maybe it gets to the point where we see a movie like every 2 years because they know that they're successful. They have an established formula. And like once one is about to release, they already have the other one in production. And maybe they could see a flow like that. But that's something they're going to build up to. And we're not going to see that now. And the same also with the parks, right? Like it's going to take years before we see anything beyond Mario and Donkey Kong. But eventually, they'll do Zelda. I feel like they have to do Pokemon and Animal Crossing as well, at least. And I feel like maybe those will be like the 5 main parks. And then like the Metroids, the F-Zeros, the Star Foxes, the Kid Icaruses, maybe they fit in like a little side attraction in between.
Yeah, like an individual ride or something.
Yeah. And then 15 years from now, we'll be talking about the 5 different Nintendo movies and like the 4 different Nintendo parks. But it's gonna take a while.
We'll have our rankings of everything.
Yeah.
But that means we got to bring in like the old Mario movie then too into the ranking.
Yeah.
It exists.
Yeah.
It was a thing.
And also because of that strategy, like the Nintendo's gonna become a lot more mainstream, right? Like we're talking about like Switch maybe getting to like 150 million systems sold. But 15 years from now, we'll be talking about Switch 4 getting to like maybe 300 million or something. Like that's like I think like the possibility that they have.
Ambitious.
Yeah,
that's ambitious because we're entering year
maybe 200. I'm just saying that they're gonna expand their audience.
Maybe 200.
I'm just saying that they're gonna do better. They're trying to set themselves up to do better than what the Switch is now by expanding their audience.
Absolutely, I think that's the plan.
Yeah.
You guys got a little peek of some sandals there. Got some nice sandals.
Oops. I won't go on too much about the Zelda movie. I think 2 weeks ago when I was last on, we had I can still hear OJ talking about or yelling about Ni no Kuni in the back of my head from that conversation like 2 weeks ago. But I mean, I still will agree that I think something like Studio Ghibli is the way to go for Zelda. I just think like the visual style of the Mario movie just doesn't. It feels very Mario. It doesn't feel very Zelda to me. But I just think for the story that Zelda could tell, I think like a mini series would work.
Just the minions dressed up as Link. I'll watch it.
No. No.
We tried rabbits and now we're on to minions.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Hey, rabbits worked well the first time around. Ubisoft's just upset with the second time around.
Koroks
Waiting for the Mario
minions.
movie post-credit scenes where some rabbits fall out of a portal and for like 5 seconds after the credits. No, please. But I think I would love to see them expand the theme park side of things. Like imagine, like I think about like Disneyland, how you can go into all these different like sections of it, right? And right now we've got this like very immersive, very Mario, very immersive sort of theme park style, or at least from what I haven't obviously been there yet, but I think the one in California opens like next month or something. Mm-hmm. But I just imagine like if you could go into a different section of the park and you're like in Hyrule, like how immersive and cool of an experience that would be for like a theme park. I think it could be really amazing. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what kind of attractions they could do with it, but it seems like they have some very unique ideas and things for the Mario side of things, like the Mario Kart and the AR stuff that they've got going on, and having like the bracelet that you can use to interact with different things at the theme park. I think if they really put their minds to it, talking about one of the most creative companies in existence.
The Zelda area clearly have to have a Triforce
really cool
collection quest, right?
Yeah, or even you collect rupees or something, like who knows?
Have a fleshed out escape room.
I just
escape room.
Yeah, you're in a dungeon and you've got to like
that would be cool.
Go through.
Have you guys ever done the Zelda?
That would actually be really cool.
Yeah,
that would be super cool.
Yeah.
So I think that's something I would like to see built upon. Obviously, they're still just kind of like don't want to say dipping their toes in because they're spending millions of dollars, but
Probably billions.
you know, it's something they're expanding into, probably billions. So to see them expand into it, I just, it makes me kind of curious what property is next. And Zelda feels like a safe bet. A Metroid one could be cool, but maybe they'd have to make it a little scary to really be Metroid, I think.
Like
So
Alien.
that might not be as fun for the kids.
I think like a Metroid thing. I mean, if you guys have ever seen the Castlevania one on Netflix, I think that kind of style could work really well for a Metroid. No, what a surprise! A Metroidvania, Castlevania. What a surprise that I think that's. But I mean,
right.
I think that there's some ways they can make a Metroid something work. I also would like to see them. Like one thing is like it's all movies so far. I would like to see them dabble in some TV shows. Obviously Pokemon is doing its thing. Has been doing its thing for decades, but it just would be really nice to see some TV shows. Like part of the thing that upset me maybe about the Zelda movie rumor isn't that we're getting a movie. It says not a TV show, because I always feel like things that have a lot of story really deserve a TV series, and Zelda has been a lot I would say is more heavy on story than a Mario game. I don't think that's a controversial opinion. So Mario to me works better as a movie, whereas Zelda to me works better as a TV show. And no, not the Excuse Me Princess, not that TV show. The ideas for that show maybe not quite right. But yeah, I don't know. I would like to see some TV series. I don't know where
What
they would
streaming app?
what they would do it on. Well, it would probably they're partnered with Universal, right? So it'd probably be aren't they on the Paramount one or
Illumination? I know, like with their movies and stuff, I think is partnered with Peacock.
Peacock? Yeah. So it'd probably be because I don't think they'll go away from their partnership with Peacock.
But
or
like,
partnership with
who
Universal.
uses Peacock?
That's not super appealing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing, like, Netflix is the one that people think about, like Netflix,
Just
or
put it on Netflix.
Amazon, right, or something like that, or if you have to go to Hulu, like those are like the three big ones that everyone thinks about. But I don't know. Like it also competes with a company that they're already partnered with.
And I mean, I don't know that for sure. It's just I know that I use Peacock, and all of the Illumination movies are on Peacock.
Yeah, no,
that's the only reason.
This is why I feel like they're just going to do a movie, because I mean, either they go for Netflix,
because they can hit
or
a bigger
or they
audience,
don't.
obviously, than Peacock. Yeah, I mean, Peacock is we have Peacock and it's fine, but it's only recent, and I'll be honest, it's my least used service that there is in my house. So,
isn't it free? Or is it
No.
free depending on
No.
your internet service?
no.
I think they offered it to me for free for my internet service, and I never used it.
Maybe it was paired
Yeah.
with a company like
Yeah.
that.
It's definitely possible.
I mean, hey, there's that Alien show on there,
Oh, yeah,
and that's the only
Alien. Oh yeah.
yeah, Resident Alien. If you haven't seen it, that show's worth Peacock alone just to watch that.
Yeah, I'm only giving you pushback because I feel like the point of the movies and the TVs and stuff is to branch out and reach out as many people as possible. So when we start talking about putting on a streaming app, that becomes more exclusive. And if like they want to use Zelda to like push Peacock, that's great for Peacock, but that's not great for Zelda.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
That's
no,
why I'm
right.
like a little.
Yeah,
I'm
I think
a little
Zelda's a bigger
skeptical.
deal probably overall than Peacock as a services right now.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. Everything's going to services.
Mhm.
So, there was that rumored Netflix animated or live action series ages ago. Probably was never a thing. I don't know. Maybe there was a conversation.
That's possible.
Maybe there was a phone call with execs about it. Maybe there was a pitch, right? There's a lot of pitches that happen that end up not being a thing. And that's what ends up leaking out is, oh, they're going to do this live action. Yeah, they were probably pitched something. It doesn't mean it ever got approved and went into any sort of production or serious script writing. But I mean, that's the thing. Like, it kind of feels like if you're going to do a TV show and put it on a streaming service, I mean, it's got to be, it's probably got to be Netflix. Like, they're still the biggest kid on the block if you're going to do something like that. I mean, Pokemon's on there. So, like, it's not like it's not like they don't have something going on in there. I know it's different companies that manage that, but still, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's why they're not. Maybe that's why they're just going to go with movies. They don't got to worry about it then. Hey, we're with Universal. We're in their Universal parks. We'll just keep making Universal movies and call it a day. They'll just want to be the new Marvel Cinematic Universe,
which is why they need to build up to a Smash Bros. Movie.
A Smash Bros. Avengers movie. Got it. I know.
We're waiting for like that epilogue cutscene in the Mario movie. If there's like a post credits something,
As long as it's not rabbits. As long as it's not rabbits.
Dude, if there's a post-credits scene that teases the next animated movie and it's not Mario, I'm like, oh my gosh, they are literally Marvel Cinematic Universe in this right now.
It's gonna be Donkey Kong eating a banana on an island. And it's
Probably.
like a
And
bang.
then, I think it's Frozen.
That's it. I'm here for it.
You're gonna hear King K. Rool ship or something, and that's gonna cut.
Oh
That'll be
no.
really cool.
Diddy
I would
Kong
love
be
to see
flipping some
them.
peanuts into his mouth.
I would love to see them do more with Pikmin as well, because we've seen teases of Pikmin around the theme park. But I don't know if anyone remembers the Pikmin short films that they did back in the day, but those were excellent.
Those were
I
very
loved
good.
those.
Yeah.
They were really well done. I mean, Pikmin is an underappreciated series in general. I think it often is a bit of an underdog, but it's a really special and really neat property. Pikmin Bloom aside, maybe. So I don't know. I think it would be really neat to see what they could do if they had more, like more of a chance to develop that, like they did with the Pikmin shorts. Like make even just more of those shorts, I would be fine with. Yeah,
Those shorts were great.
They were
So we're gonna
great.
get wrapping things up here. One thing I have to get this question in because this comes from Mike, one of our usual co-hosts who couldn't make it because he's a big wig at Apple, so he just can't get away. He had a question for Kit and Krysta. He wants to know what game you both played as kids that still holds a great deal of value to you today.
Value.
Yes, value's subjective measurement.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I know Krysta and I often debate our favorite 2D Mario games, and she's more of a Super Mario World person, and I'm more of a Super Mario Brothers 3 person. The idea for me, Mario 3 really did blow my mind of the scope of a game, how big a game could be. I'm gonna go with that. I always will love Super Mario Brothers 3.
Yeah, I always say my favorite game of all time is Super Mario World, and I still play that game all the time, and I still feel like it holds up. But I will say another game that is maybe one that I don't talk about as much is actually Mario Kart Double Dash, because that's the first gaming console. The GameCube was the first gaming console that I actually bought with my own money. So it was finally I can afford to buy my own video game console and games that I want to play and not have to beg my parents or wait for Christmas or birthdays. And I ever have very fond memories of playing that with my friends, and just some additional pride because I was like, oh, I bought this myself. This is so cool.
Nice. All right. Well, we're going to wrap things up here. You guys can go subscribe to Kit and Krysta on their channel. They do a podcast. Do you guys have any content you want to tease? I know it's Sonic Week right now.
It is Sonic Week. I am a lifelong Sonic hater, but we recently passed 50,000 subs on YouTube, so we are doing that as a special for our subscribers. Every day of the week, we have a new piece of Sonic content that's out. Our most recent one was reacting to Sonic music, which was quite good, I will say. It's been an eye-opening experience, but we're having a good time with it.
Has it changed your mind about it?
In some ways. Not all of them, though.
Sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to cut you off there. But
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, it's
No.
all about Kit this week because he has childhood trauma that we need to work through. We had to have someone from Sega on to help him with his traumatic childhood experiences. But it's been really fun. I've not been just super versed in the Sonic universe since I grew up such a Mario kid. But yeah, learning a lot about Sonic. The music they're all bangers. We're doing a stream tonight of Sonic Frontiers, so that should be kind of cool. I've been sitting on that game since it came out last year, so it'll be fun to actually play it. But yeah, we also have a Patreon that our Patreon community basically supports everything that we do on our channel, and we have a goal this year to get back to Japan, which we haven't been in many years, just to create all sorts of cool content for our viewers. So if you guys are interested in joining us, we're at patreon.com/Kit and Krysta.
Nice. Is there anywhere else you guys might want them to follow you? Any other social medias before we get to our other guests?
We're Kit and Krysta on pretty much every social media channel you can imagine. So whatever one you like, we're there.
Nice. All right.
super easy.
Andres Restar, what do you got going on? Where can people find you?
Well, Andres Restart. You can find me on YouTube. That's what I usually do. There's Twitter, so if you search Andres Restart, you will find me. What do I have going on? A number of things are going on. Hopefully, I'll finish my Metroid video today. We shall see. Stay tuned.
Awesome. Daniel Cat Bergeson. I know it's not popping you up here. I'm trying to make it work.
That's
It's
okay.
failing me.
I can be small.
What do you got going
I can
on?
be a small boy. Yeah. So all my socials, everything is Capt Burgerson, as in there is the captain, and look, his dad is an actual burger. And what do I got going on? I got I got a lot of. I'm streaming right after this, actually, playing some Four Swords Adventures. But I just put up a video on Friday that's like a breakdown of all the dungeons in Zelda 1, and then next week I'll have a video on all the dungeons of Zelda 2. It's a very painful time. I have a lot of praise and complaints. I think a healthy mix.
Nice.
Mostly Zelda content on my front there. Yeah, that's me. I no longer am on. People ask me about this a lot lately. I'm no longer on the Hylian Gamescast on the Game Over Jesse channel, just so people know. So it's I'm more focused on my actual channel. So there isn't any drama or anything. I just spread myself too thin sometimes. So yeah,
That happens.
There you go.
That does happen.
Yes.
You can obviously find Eric over on Twitter at emo8790. Otherwise, just make comments right here on our YouTube channel, especially like on our podcast episodes. He reads through them as well as I
On the
do
podcast channel.
on the
Or
podcast,
a podcast.
on our podcast videos.
Yeah,
You can
Not
get
channel.
the podcast anywhere podcasts are heard. Literally, we're on everything. In fact, the audio version of this video version will be up the same day later today. Also, hey, we're literally going to be live streaming right after this because there's an Xbox Direct. You guys know we got to check that out. So thank you guys for being here. And Eric's microphone just snapped. So
Well, that's good
fun.
timing.
We'll have to fix that before the stream.
Dramatic.
You guys have a good rest of your day. Hope you guys enjoyed the show, and we'll catch you all next week.
Bye.
Hi.
bye.